Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Latest in Travel podcast by Guestcentric. And I'm very excited to welcome to today's episode Mark Fancourt, who is the co-founder of TRAVHOTECH, which is an award-winning hospitality and travel technology consultancy, which combines operational experience and technology expertise and delivers it to global hospitality and travel companies. So Mark, it's really great to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks very much for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. And so for anyone who might be listening or watching this episode, do you mind just giving a little bit of a background of who you are and what you've been up to in the industry and what it is that you do and so on?
Sure. Well, TRAVHOTECH is, I guess, the latest part of my journey. And TRAVHOTECH, as you said, is a technology consultancy that focuses on holistic technology for travel and hospitality organizations, as well as the technology provider community for the industry, which leads into my background, I suppose, which comes from both sides of the industry. So originally, I started out as an operational hotelier, went to hotel school. Early in my career, opened a lot of hotels, got involved in what at the time was fairly progressive technology. And it just sort of continued on from there. I worked with Fidelio and then Micros Fidelio for a number of years, handling a lot of the enterprise technology for hotel groups, CRM, distribution, e-commerce, revenue management. And following that, I did 3 stints as the head of technology for hotel companies. Initially Pan Pacific Hotels and Resorts, then PBHG, and then moved to Las Vegas, where I am today, to do the same with MGM Resorts. And then I went back to vendor world again with an interesting company called Scenium, which had a sort of single platform for the comprehensive hospitality operations based on the ERP technology from Microsoft. And then I got to the end of all of that and I thought, well, what should you do with yourself now? And I thought, well, you've got operational experience, you've got experience running technology for hotel groups, you've got experience, in bringing enterprise technology into hotel groups and everything that goes around being a technology provider in the industry. I thought, well, that's a good combination to help other people with their technology. And so I founded TRAVHOTECH with my partner Shane and also another organization, Testbed Vegas, which is a non-profit focused on community for industry technology. And away we go. And 6 years later, here we are. So, yeah.
That's really interesting. And what made you sort of do that leap from the operational side to more of the technology side? Like what drove that decision in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think I'm probably not unlike a lot of industry technologists of my generation. A lot of us began in operations and in technology. I mean, we had technology, but it really sort of started to emerge a little bit more so in the time that I came up through operations. And the thing that really drove it for me was because I was exposed to Fidelio at that point, and that was in the 80s. And that was, for anyone who had that experience, it was a remarkable transition from the technology that we'd been using today. And it's driven so many things that have happened in industry. So, for anyone who sort of knows the trajectory of the company, that they went on to become, even today, the most globally deployed software solutions for the industry, functionally rich and so forth. And that was I was just really interested in it. And I found I had a sort of an aptitude for it, the education component, the sort of project side of it, the logic, and then of course the business process, which is equally a part of technology. And I just sort of moved into it from there, which became extremely exciting at that time because it was the software in the industry, and we couldn't keep it on the shelf. So it was a very high-paced world. I ended up, as I moved through the company, working with enterprise hoteliers, which, with brands and groups and global deployments. And that really changed my vision for what technology could and should be in industry. And that's probably propelled me on to most of the things I've done since, and how I bring our expertise from TRAVHOTECH to my clients.
Cool. That's really interesting. And I'm guessing there must have been like quite a big development from like back then in terms of the technology and the evolution up until today. What would you say was like one of, I don't know, the biggest sort of turning points from then up until now in terms of technology for hoteliers? Like what would be the main thing that you would pinpoint from that?
I mean, feature functionality certainly drove it, but on the back of, well, I think, a couple of, I mean, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. So there's been a number of things that have significantly changed I think the momentum of technology would be the way I would put it. Then it was from mainframe technology to PC technology, which just simply meant it was more affordable. The next phase after that was, I don't want to say that interfacing is easy between systems, because it's not, but systems started to become a little bit more connectable. And then that gave hoteliers the opportunity to deploy more technology. And then the next piece was sort of moving above the property, which this was pre-cloud. This is when data centers and that type of thing emerged, and that allowed hotel companies to have sort of a cross business or above business technology. And then the other part that probably happened around about then was the types of databases that were available, which allowed us to store more information and access it more readily. Also moving sort of towards a Windows platform, which was a bit more friendly than the mainframe or the DOS type environments that we'd grown up with. And then the last part would be, the advent of the cloud in terms of a platform, and making technology a little bit more easily deployable. I think those are the things that I would cite as the big change points that I think shifted momentum and approach. And then now today we're on the verge of the next one, which is artificial intelligence. So, I've seen quite a few transitions there, but I think all of them have done a little bit more each time to enable hoteliers and to get their hands on technology, I think, in a more accessible way.
Yeah. I think it's just incredible how, I don't know, it seems even in the last like 10 years, how everything's just changed so fast. Like there's certain things that, just looking in general, like the type of, I don't know, cell phones I used to use like 10 years ago in comparison to today, and just like how everything's like changed. And obviously there's a lot of things like that people talk about that are, like that probably only very much in the future it'll be like a more like a bigger reality. I don't know, like the metaverse maybe being one of them. So in some sense it might seem like slow, but then on the other hand, it's like when I just look back on like the last 10 years, it's like, and for you, I can imagine, with 30 years of experience, it's like a lot of change and development. So yeah, very, very interesting. So drawing on your extensive experience with like sort of all the different waves of technology and as it relates to the industry, you've written like some articles previously about how it's crucial for the hospitality and travel businesses to continue embracing this evolution and adapting and so on, as far as I understood. So in your opinion, like how can technology experts more effectively persuade leaders in these sort of companies in our industry to embrace the change, adopt the new technologies, and sort of view them as an integral components of their business strategy? Like what would be the the ways that, you know, you could sort of convince those leaders to buy into these technologies and roll them out across their businesses?
Yeah, it's a really interesting quandary for the industry, and you know, it's probably been around as long as I've been in the industry. But part of it is structural, part of it's cultural. The reality is that I think there's a number of combinations that probably are still preventing the scale of technology adoption that I would expect. And I'm often surprised that you know, since I moved on from running technology for hospitality groups, I sort of thought things would have moved quicker, but they haven't necessarily. Part of that, I think, is organizational structure. You know, it's necessary for organizations to put their technology leaders or advisors, however they might be approaching it, in a position where they are able to influence and drive change, direction, and strategy. And yet today, you'll still find a lot of organizations that don't have any genuine technology leadership of an experience set that's going to enable that. You'll also find that you know, technology leadership tends to get buried in the organizational structure versus having a voice to the people who really need to hear it, and being treated, you know, structurally and culturally as an equal and a contributor to the business. And we hear a lot of the business and IT. Well, there is no business and IT. IT is an equal and integral part of any organization, just as HR or finance or front of house operations is. But we've still got a ways to go there. And that's cultural, and culture takes a long time to change. But I think it's a two-pronged approach. Leadership needs to embrace technology more genuinely, and they need to put their technology expertise in a position where they can set an agenda for the organization and move it forwards. And that I think alone will change the visibility of the function for industry, and it will change the way that organizations work across the organization with their technology counterparts. That's been my observation over well, a lot of years now. And you know, while some organizations have well and truly moved past that, other organizations not so much. It still looks like, you know, the 2000s or the 90s in terms of approach towards where the role of technology sits in an organization. So I think that's key.
And what would be, in your opinion, like some ways to kind of bridge that, you know, to bring sort of the knowledge of the business together with the technology side and sort of merge those two sort of components together, that, you know, could implement like strategies that would actually have a good impact on the business? Like, what would be some practical ways to do that, in your opinion?
Yeah, one of the challenges that the technology leadership's often had is the depth of understanding of the business of hospitality. And you've got to be a student of the business, because you have to be able to look at the business holistically. That's number one. Number two is, you know, I learned very early in my career that if you want to go to meetings with your peer group and talk about technology, you probably won't get very far. You know, you have to be able to speak the business of the industry and speak to your fellow business leaders in terms of business. And when you do that, you find that you get a whole lot more traction. So that's step one from technology leadership's perspective. From broader leadership's perspective, I think they need to put their technology leaders in a position to do that. One of the challenges that happens when they are sort of buried down the organization is they don't get involved early enough in the commercial and operational approach to the business, which limits their learning. And they don't get to gain a high level understanding of what the pressures and the challenges and the opportunities are in the business, and that restricts their ability to have the same effect. So if you bring those two closer together, the results will improve, definitely. And once you get to that point, then you're in a position where you're having a genuine business discussion about enablement of the business and platforms that can actually bring that to pass. And that's a different type of discussion to, oh, we would like a new PMS and this is the one we've chosen. Can you deploy it, please? Which is often the case today.
Yeah. I'm not sure, like, this isn't actually maybe really a question, it's more kind of an observation, but I think something that I've noticed, like, in my sort of working experience and stuff, is sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to kind of understand, because technology is so complex and everything, and sometimes, the way that it's communicated, there's maybe a breakdown in the communication. So sometimes, it's like I speak to an engineer or a software developer and I'm like completely, I'm like, is this even in English? Is this the same language, And then sometimes there's this, like, and I'm not saying, that it's all the time, but like quite a lot of times there's this kind of like, how can we reach that understanding that it's like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, like what would be sort of the ways to sort of simplify these very complex concepts and systems and things like that, to sort of put it in layman terms and convince, like, okay, this is how it's going to help you. Like, would you have any recommendations on that? Like,
well, you're right about that, and that's essentially what I was referring to. And there's, I think what I would say, having had the opportunity to lead fellow technologists in many of my roles, there's two types of technology people. There's the highly technical people, which tend to be driven around infrastructure or software development and that type of thing. And then there's the business side of technology, which is about organizations, operations, deployment, and so on. So I think sometimes when we expect people in the former group to be able to articulate in that way, it's an unrealistic expectation. They live in that world, and they should live in that world. But when you roll it back to business, your average colleague or peer group is not so motivated about how it's built or the technical componentry of things. They're interested in what they can do, right? Or what they can't do and what they would like to do, or what they would be able to do as a result of the implementation of some type of a tool or business platform. And that's the key. That's where the dialogue needs to be, is about opportunities, possibilities, capabilities, processes, and so on, because operational hoteliers understand that. And in the same way that your average technologist probably isn't all that motivated by the minutiae of human resources, right? It's no different for anyone else. They're not necessarily motivated by the minutiae of IT, so leave that out of it and stick to the common elements of things, which is the business and the capability that you can create. And that, in my experience, resonates with hoteliers, because hoteliers are practical people. They're task-oriented people, and they're very much focused on the customer and the processes they have to go through to enable the customer. So if you focus on that type of dialogue and that type of initiative, you'll find you'll have a lot more success.
Great. Yeah, I agree with that. Sort of like the what's in it for the business, or what's in it for us, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
And along this line, so obviously the like the hotel industry, the hospitality industry, it's very much people orientated, very much high touch kind of industry. So in terms of sort of moving along a bit to using technology a bit as like an enabler to, I guess, like elevate the service levels and so on. What would you say, in your opinion, like how can technology be strategically implemented in a hospitality business, be it hotels or any other, to enhance sort of the staff performance, or like the performance of their teams and their people, and ultimately elevate the overall service experience and the customer experience?
Yeah. Well, that's the key. Certainly from TRAVHOTECH's perspective, that those are the two key approaches. Revenue growth from the customer-facing side of technology, and operational cohesion for the organizational side of technology. So, my view has always been that technology really is competitive advantage. It's one of the few places that in our industry you can still get competitive advantage. And the reason I say that is because of the adoption life cycle. And in my experience, the adoption life cycle of certain technologies could be as much as 20 years, which is extraordinary when you think about the speed of technology. But having said all of that, so look, I think for me, one of my key objectives when I'm working on initiatives for industry is trying to align the way the hospitality industry operates with the way that the customer sees the business. So today, largely our let's call it a resort hotel operation operates predominantly in sort of 5 major silos. There's the rooms piece, there's the dining piece, there's the lifestyle, there's the meetings and events, and sometimes there's a retail component. And all of those environments tend to operate on their own pillar of technology, and across business operations is not straightforward. Yet the way that the customer sees our industry is they see a business with all those products and services to consume, and they expect it to be somewhat homogenous when they deal with us. And we try to present a digital face to that suggests that is how things operate, but it falls down when we get inside the operation and we find that individual departments are very much stuck in their own business process based on technical capability. So for me, the real opportunity for industry as we move forwards is to realign the way that the operation works and have much better alignment with the way the customer sees the business, and we present products and services to the customer and then subsequently deliver those services in a more coordinated way. The opportunity there, of course, is from a revenue perspective, selling all the products and services that a business has to offer, whereas today we tend to only offer them digitally in a subset, and sometimes we don't really offer a range of products to the customer until they get to site, and that's too late. As well as being able to look across the business, from a holistic customer perspective and understand what customers are doing and leverage tools like Guest-Centric, for example, that gives us a broader knowledge of what the customer is doing and helps us better fit products and services for their consumption, which is ultimately, from a business perspective, the end goal at the end of the day. So that I think that's very core to it. Certainly, I spend a lot of time focused on that as I look to clients that I work with, because I think that the revenue gains and the organisational efficiencies are quite extraordinary. Unfortunately, I've had experience working in that environment, as a technology leader, so I have some sort of direct vision into the possibilities that come from that type of a technology platform.
Yeah, I suppose in everything that kind of combines or has, I don't know, like the different functions as well, like the sales, the marketing, the revenue management, and like everyone's just aligned, makes it a lot more of a seamless experience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a bit, I mean, it's kind of related, but like, I don't know, just thinking of like an independent hotel or like smaller, brands or things like that really have to sort of, like, there's so much technology out there. There's so many providers. There's, possibly quite a bit of noise, and what would be sort of the I don't know, like how in your opinion could these businesses that are sort of smaller and have limited resources and funds, I guess, to invest, what would be like the step to prioritize, like, okay, this is the solution we would need for our business to help, the operational efficiency and, to reach the customers in the best way possible? Like, what would be the steps for that, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's all relative. We do hear this a lot. Oh, well, small operators haven't got the funds and big ones do. Having been involved in both have the same challenges. It's not unique to one part of the industry or the other. If anything, I would say that smaller operators have probably convinced themselves that they don't, but it's not true. And at the end of the day, going back to the key drivers for me, competitive advantage is number one, right? Revenue growth and organizational cohesion underpin that. So the question that I often pose to my clients is, well, look, you can do it manually. And our industry comes from a great history of manual operations, and we've had a level of success as an industry over a very long time operating that way. And it's not to say that you can't, right? You can, but what you can't do is gather information. You can't share information. You can't analyze information. And most people, would follow the statement that information is power. So if you don't have the information, then it's very difficult for you to make the right decisions to further improve whatever it is that you might be doing in your business. So in my view, it's actually imperative to embrace technology in a far more meaningful way and adopt it more deeply, because that's what you're missing out on at the end of the day. So let's use guest-centric as a good example. So do I have to have some type of CRM technology in my hospitality business? Well, no, I don't. And for many, many years, the industry has not done so. And it's, in many ways, except for the largest organizations, still relatively new as a tool for adoption into hospitality. Not for good reasons, mind you, but just more because we've reached that stage where we're starting to think that way as compared to other industries. So I don't have to, but then if I don't, given the nature of some of the other aspects of our industry, it's very, very difficult for me to get a holistic view of a group of customers, let alone an individual customer, so that I can try to reach that customer in a more meaningful way and grow revenue as a result. So do I have to have a CRM? No, but then you have to work out how you're going to gather that type of very important business information and leverage it to operate your business when you're trying to operate across maybe 4 or 5 siloed systems, and trying to piece it together in some way, and lacking the analysis tools or even just the simple reporting tools that give value back from that type of information. So that's a practical example. It might be sort of higher up the technology tree in terms of priority, but it's no different for any other part of the business in terms of line of business capability, whether it be front or back of house. I'm often surprised how low the adoption is of things like supply chain platforms when hotels often have extensive amounts of funds sitting on the shelf, and yet they do this manually. They lack the intelligence around stock keeping procedures and past stocks and things like that, as well as just the ability to keep track of pricing in a meaningful way and negotiate with their vendors. So there are so many examples, and as you touched on, Melissa, when I work with a client who might be in that situation, normally I start from the beginning with a holistic approach, and we look at their comprehensive business and determine what it is that they would ultimately like to achieve and start from there. Because technology investment is not a short-term game, it's a long-term game, and you need you need to have a plan to do so. And that plan needs to be looked at holistically so you do eventually achieve the goal. Whereas what I find a lot of people do is that they go on one-out expeditions trying to find one piece of technology here and one piece of technology there. And that's just not the nature of business today. And it doesn't produce the right results because you end up back at the drawing board next time you go looking for another piece of point technology. So I think, you know, a lot of that's legacy in terms of the way the industry's behaved. A lot of it has been propagated by the technology provider community as well, in fairness. So poor old hoteliers are sort of like, well, you know, you guys have been saying we should get point products. Well, things have changed. You know, technology is far more pervasive now. It's far more horizontal in an organization, and those organizations that approach it from a master design perspective ultimately end up with a better result when it comes to the type of, you know, operability that they want to have for their company.
It's interesting. I guess on a human level, we're kind of limited sometimes by like our short-sightedness with these things. And I don't know, it's kind of like, okay, let's, you know, there's this gap, let's put a Band-Aid on it or something, but then not really looking at the, I don't know, an analogy that popped to my head as you were saying this was, I used to live in South Africa, and there was this bridge that, you know, every time, like I lived near the coast, and every time the rains would come, there would be flooding and it would wash away the bridge because it was so close to the water levels, and they would go and patch it up. But, you know, you couldn't use that road for like a few weeks at a time. They would do a cheap, you know, little job on it instead of building, I don't know, a higher bridge. And every year it's the same issue, and it ends up costing more because it's like, yeah, you keep paying that out. And then it's like, I don't know, it's a bit short-sighted, I guess, like in that.
Yeah, well, it's a great analogy. Yeah, and again, it comes back to, I think, a lot of the culture of the industry, and you know, we're so task-oriented, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's not a critique at all. It's the reality of our business. But technology ultimately is an asset management exercise. And these are, you know, a lot of people say the cost, it's not the expense, not a cost or an expense. These are assets of the business, and it needs to be approached in that manner. And assets, as we all know, and for the assets we have in our own personal lives, are generally approached from a long-term, you know, structural or strategic perspective. And it's no different in business, but we often don't approach technology in that way. And that's the key, you know, is you need to be able to take that step back and take a look, you know, at the horizon on the future, and align it with the objectives that you would like to ultimately achieve, and you know, what type of a business do you want to be, right? Let's start from there instead of focusing on I need a new PMS. You know, if I had $1 for every time I had someone say to me, I need a new PMS, I wouldn't be working anymore. But often that's not what they need.
Yeah.
But it's a, you know, this is my problem, you know. No, the opportunities are usually much bigger than that, and that's something that I spend a lot of time with my clients educating them on, to be honest, and helping them sort of take that step back and slow down a little bit, and build out something that, to your point, financially you can work towards, and logically bring the different tool sets in that you need to build that comprehensive operating environment that allows you to be faster, higher, stronger, you know, than you were in the previous life before you went through such an exercise. So you know, if hotel companies have any benefit there, it's because they do, you know, the corporate operations of your average hotel group is a strategic organization first and foremost. And if anything, that's where larger hospitality groups have a leg up because they have the opportunity to take the strategic approach. Whereas when you're a little bit further down the scale, that's not so easy to do. And that's where people like me, help when they haven't got that permanent capacity. But it's extremely important because the picking here and picking there does not ultimately get you to a long-term destination. And there's a lot of noise out there today, as you touched on earlier, Melissa, about, well, if you don't like it, you just get rid of it. No, the deployment of software into a business is it's a big deal for all of the impacts that it has. And once you've put a piece of software in, you want to be successful with it. You should not be approaching it from the perspective of, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's move on to the next thing. And that's the difference between a strategic approach to technology adoption and sort of what has been the trend in industry for a long time.
You said something just a little bit earlier about how many times people say they need a new PMS or something, but then that's not actually what they need. It's what they think they need. What would be sort of the way, and I guess this kind of comes back to also the communication point that we touched on a bit earlier as well. But how do you convince, this is what you need for your business, in terms of also looking into the future and the future of their business, and what's the way to convince, these leaders that this is what is needed for them?
I think when it's presented back to them in terms of what they're really, it's the combination of what they want to achieve and what's missing ultimately. Going for the new PMS is almost a rite of passage for a lot of people, but it's really interesting that I often find, for example, that someone needs a new PMS but they don't have a sales platform.
Right.
And so they go, well, okay, maybe your PMS might leave a little bit to be desired, right? But there's this whole other part of your organization that's really important and you don't have anything. So do you really need a new PMS? Let's take a look at your capabilities as an organization, what you can do, what you have automated, versus something that you've already automated that might not be the absolute best thing you've ever had, but probably, in my experience, doesn't necessarily need to be replaced all the time. So it's just interesting, and maybe that's a legacy of the fact that from a front of house perspective, the PMS was the first major system that we all really became associated with, and we get fixated around it. But to put that into perspective, when I work with a hospitality operator, whether it be sort of brand or individual, the ecosystem of business functions today that should or would be supported by technical capability, it's up almost around the 200 mark. So it's an extremely complex environment, and I think that's often underestimated by the layman. It's not, technology is simple in hospitality. It's not. It's extremely complex, and it really takes some time to sort of take a look at an individual organisation and find the right fit for their future, depending on what it is that they might be using today, and how that fits in nicely with anything that they might do in the future, or whether they should sort of make more substantial changes. And so it's not simple and it's not straightforward. And I can tell you that when I go through that exercise, I spend a lot of time with executive leadership working on exactly that, because going back to some of your earlier points, once they understand the capabilities they need to be able to deliver, automated or not, right, then it's a little bit easier for them to understand where the opportunities lie.
Yeah, I agree. And even I have to say, like, because my first experience sort of working in the hospitality industry, but in the software development side, is actually working at Guestcentric, which I joined only in like the end of 2019. And this is something that, you know, it's been a work in progress and a journey, like, you know, working in the marketing department, you know, and having to communicate these concepts and like what we offer and so on, you know, to our audience, like to, I guess, more of a layman audience. And I'm quite a layman person myself, so it's kind of like how, you know, getting these sort of complex concepts, but then, yeah, I guess showing what's in it for them is, yeah, I guess important.
Yeah, look, I think for me, you know, that has helped me naturally. I went to hotel school. I did my master's in hospitality. I worked through multiple different independent and brand hotels. I worked across departments, and I worked in leadership roles. I opened hotels. I had different types of technology experiences, and that was before I ever needed to deliver or design technology for organizations. And that makes a huge difference, because you can speak the language of the business. And at the end of the day, if again, as sophisticated as our industry is, hoteliers are motivated by, I think, ultimately by simple things, and they just want someone who understands, and who can take what they're saying and turn it into a tool that responds to the types of things that they're doing. And look, there's no doubt that has been a great asset to me. And going back to some of our earlier topics, often we find people come into the industry, into technology functions, and they've come in without the benefit of industry operational experience. And we are somewhat unique to a lot of other industries. Yes, we sell products and services like everyone else, but the way in which we do it is a little bit removed from a lot of other industries. So that really does help. It really does make things a little bit easier as a path for a technology leader if you have that background.
Yeah, I can imagine. Cool. So I think this is actually a good sort of segue into the next topic, which or question that I have, which is, so sort of looking at like the state of technology today and the current trends that, you know, are in our industry. In your like sort of perspective, what is like one prediction that you have in terms of technology and how it will impact the future of travel and hospitality? And what would be your one prediction for that, and why?
We will see hoteliers increasingly adopt more comprehensive technology platforms, which simplify their business and allow them to operate with less vendors. And the reason for that is because that's the way that the customer sees the business. And ultimately, in a customer service oriented organization where we're looking to please the customer, our tools and processes need to align with the customer's view of our organization. And so that would be my prediction. And that's a step away from the way it's always been. So that would be one. And then I think my other one from a broader perspective is that the lower tier of today's current hospitality product will fall out of what we know as the traditional hospitality industry, because by nature of the way that product's being delivered and the reduction or the absence of any service, it won't really genuinely represent hospitality anymore.
And how would you define lower tier? Sorry.
Those types of hotels today that, really you're just getting a room and that's the end of the experience. Eventually, I think the customer will catch up with that and realize that that's not really hospitality, and it will become its own sort of space as we move forward.
Okay. And in terms of the widespread adoption of these more like holistic solutions, what would sort of be, I guess, like in terms of the guest side or the consumer side, like what in your perspective is would drive that development in our industry?
Well, look, from the guest point of view, it's all to do with a more holistic experience of product and service for the customer, on the guest side, right? And then on the operation side, that driver is the revenue aspect of things. So to give you a really simple example, today, for the most part, the only really robust digital marketplace that we have as an industry is rooms. Everything else is in a fledgling state, or it's been handed off to some third-party operator through a lack of understanding or forgetting about what happened to the industry in the early 2000s. So at the end of the day, if you have more than rooms to sell to a customer, then you need to be able to sell them to the customer. And as commerce becomes more digital, that means that you have to be able to digitally offer all of your products and services to the customer. And that's not something that's easily done today. It's not something that I think necessarily has occurred to industry generally in a lot of ways. But again, if you're a resort and you have a room, you have dining spaces, you have lifestyle, you have perhaps education or entertainment opportunities, you have retail, and you have meetings and events, then it should be possible to consume those digitally. But more so than just digitally, it should be possible to consume those as an overall experience for the customer. And on the operational side, we want to be able to offer those things as true priced inventory, not add-ons or parts of packages as we've traditionally done, because we have no other way to do it, but genuine inventory based on availability, because ultimately we want to price optimize these services. So that's what's going to drive that type of environment from the customer facing side of it, which for me ultimately is the digital experience. And then of course, to support that, you need a platform that can deliver exactly what I just described. And those are the things that are going to drive that change as we go forward.
Interesting. And sort of looking at other trends, and we touched a bit on this earlier in regards to AI, which is quite a big hot topic at the moment. And certainly, like, I don't know, with the advent of ChatGPT actually was 2022, I think, the end of the year that they announced it. And then there was some debates in the beginning of last year about how it would impact distribution and so on, and it continues to have an impact. I'll say, like, from a content perspective, I had my, because I am a creative person, and there's like, I don't want AI taking over my creative joy, as it were. But in terms of, I don't know, from the guest experience, when I'm planning a trip or things like that, something that I do see as advantageous is having that very detailed, because planning a trip can sometimes be a bit of there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of pop-ups and things like coming up. So having those detailed results for what you're searching for, very specific, is something that I would genuinely appreciate as a consumer. But in your opinion, like, how do you foresee AI continuing to sort of revolutionize or impact distribution and the strategies? And how do you think specifically it will help sort of independent hotels and small groups and so on to kind of reduce, I guess, the dependency on the intermediaries and the third parties and kind of drive more of that direct business?
Yeah, look, I think it's still, it's very early days for AI, right? And you know, to your point, I think, yeah, there's some ethical questions there that need to be resolved. Yeah, going back to your point about content creation, Melissa, well, I think we all need to remember that the content creation that AI does is the curation of other people's content. So, yeah, AI has access to everything that people already created, right? Now, as we go forwards, obviously there'll be AI creation on top of the things that people created, but ultimately it pulls together other information that's available and just does it in a more effective way. So I tend to think that there'll always be room for the human element in all of these things. Going back to the distribution discussion. So for me, I think the opportunity as we move forwards is that, you know, I'm very voice technology, voice input has always been something that's very important to me from a capability and from particularly from an operational perspective for hoteliers or customers. And the reason for that is that it's the same reason you and I are sitting here having a chat and not typing. Okay, this is our most comfortable form of input, and as we go forwards, more and more technology will be based on voice input, right? So the nature of AI being much more sort of question and prompt oriented than traditional search, I think is the big opportunity for hospitality. So, you know, instead of, you know, looking for hotels in a particular city, for example, you'll ask a question about where you want to go and what's good and what I should do there. So the benefit of that is that hopefully smaller operators or industry in general is able to bypass the traditional aggregators, right? Because people aren't going to the aggregator anymore. They're just going to their Google browser or to their Bing browser, and they're just asking the questions, right? So that's a big opportunity to shift some of the channel distribution that's out there. But we also have to remember that these companies will also have all those same things. So I you know, I don't think it's as cut and dried as everyone thinks, and there's going to be the next jumble and muddle of how all of these sort of AI-based searches intersect, and I dare say that we'll go through a phase at some point in the future where we're sort of still competing against big blocks of product and service in the same way that we compete not just in hospitality but across any industry today. Is it easier for a level of content creation for hoteliers who may not be fantastic at doing that or necessarily have the manpower in house to do those sorts of things? Yes, it is. But at the same time, I think the question still remains: well, is your business just going to be a byproduct of AI, or is there going to be something individual about it that a customer should want to come and see you? Because at the end of the day, everyone's going to do the same thing, right? So yes, like all technology, there's an adoption curve, and as I touched on earlier, the adoption curve, in my experience in our industry, can be from leader to laggard, can be 20 years. You know, so will it be that long with AI? No, it won't, because very, very large technology companies are driving this through their core products. So we're already all reasonably exposed to it and learning how to get something out of it. I think the more immediate opportunities for AI is sort of in the CRM space. So those people, the challenge that we have as operational hoteliers, going back to the nature of our business, is it's very task oriented. Most hoteliers are focused on getting through today and then taking a bit of a look at tomorrow and what that's going to mean for them. So one of the things that we've always had is decent information about our customers, particularly on the room side of things. So if you have any level of a reasonable property management system in your hotel, you've got profiling and you've got history capture. You may even have preferential information, notes and other anecdotes that you've learned about a customer, how they like to pay, their loyalty, their behaviour, and so on and so forth. But being able to analyse that information through the PMS with meaningful reporting that can be done on a customer set, because we, in our industry, we're largely hamstrung by, I guess, what I would call the crudeness of segmentation. Right? So that's largely dependent on whether the staff get that right when they make a reservation, for example. But that's not the nature of people. You and I might be traveling for business. We might stay in the same hotel, but our expectations of that hotel and our behaviour will still be very different. So I think that's where artificial intelligence really at the moment has its big opportunity, because it can take that same data set and find other anecdotes and trends, whether it be macro or micro, that are not necessarily easily provided for by structured systems today. And that would be, where my immediate focus would be for anyone who's sort of thinking, well, what can I do with AI at this point? Now, the flip side of that is, well, do you want to put that information into AI? Okay, from a privacy perspective, or exposing the nature of your business, into the public domain, which is exactly where it goes. So in time, like all things in the hospitality sector, we are consumers of technology. Right? We're not builders of technology, and there are very good reasons for that, because we struggle to get through the day-to-day of the cut and thrust of hospitality operations, and we don't have a whole lot of business sitting around trying to develop technology. There's any number of examples to show that may not be the best approach for hoteliers. But what will happen, and what always happens in the hospitality industry, is companies like yourself bring some of that artificial intelligence to industry through their products. And that's when I think the real power will start to be available, because that artificial intelligence, one, will be against the information within that application. So you're not having to move it out to locations that might be questionable as to whether you could or you should be doing such a thing. So that's one example. There are many others. I mean, the supply chain's a huge opportunity. Obviously, just basic financial and scenario analysis is a huge opportunity. But these things will come to us through largely packaged products. And the question will become, it goes back to the same old story. At what point will your organisation be on the adoption curve? Number one. And number two, it's great to have that, but if you don't have the core information in the first place, then you don't really have anything to look at. So that's my view of it at the moment. I must admit, I get very concerned about the ethical use of AI and what people do or don't do with it today. And I think there's going to be a lot happen over the next couple of years to sort of further define how that looks in general for us as a species, beyond the specifics of hospitality.
Yeah, I agree. And something you said earlier that kind of resonates as well, I guess, is like, and I know our CTO, Sergio, he said this as well, sort of something similar, but about using this as more of an enabler and not like, I'm paraphrasing, but not as a crutch, like not over relying that then it's like, it just takes over the life and soul of your business and it's not you anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think that's the ethical piece of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, are you the byproduct of that, or do you still stand for something in terms of your own business and you leverage it? I find it very useful in my work for analysis and synthesization of information. That's where I get the value from. But if I write an article, I write the article.
Yeah.
Because it needs to be my thoughts and my views, not gathered from everyone else's previously written expertise. And there's a lot of that out there already. So,
but it's interesting how you actually see, and I don't know, maybe I sound a bit conspiracy theorist, but even on LinkedIn or like, certain posts, it's like a few different people, different backgrounds, whatever, they'll post with like the same sort of opener and stuff. And I'm like, is that you or is that was that Chat GPT or something?
Well, right.
My favorite is taking the world by storm. Everything is taking the world by
storm. Yes, that's right. That's right. Lots and lots of storms. Yeah. No, it's interesting though. I mean, look, I think that for me, ultimately the power of the analysis and the combination of what eventually will become the ease of input from the user and getting meaningful output. This to me is the huge opportunity. I think it will make technology providers' products much more valuable to the customer, and that's not to say that they're not valuable now, but if there was any sort of common war cry in hospitality operations, it's usually about, well, I can't get the reports I want and I can't get the information I want, and it's because of the general structure of information and the I guess the linear or the vertical nature of how information's been captured and stored in the past and how we can report on it. So this really breaks that open, and I think that's very, very exciting for an industry, to say, which is largely layman driven and will really, really benefit greatly from a way to easily ask for some information that they probably could never sort of sit to think down and ask in a report query or even hope to assemble the various databases to get details. So that should make for a better industry for everyone, I think. And if it's done well, ultimately, I think the customer will be the winner in terms of, the holy grail we all talk about in terms of getting to true personalization. And I think this will have a lot to do with it.
That's interesting. And looking at like hotels or other hospitality companies, specifically in your experience in consulting different businesses all around the world, are there any examples that like stand out to you of like how companies, be they hotels or other hospitality businesses, how they're implementing AI in sort of the distribution context in a way that like that stands out to you, that's like a good example that you could share?
Yeah, I don't know at the moment, Melissa. I think it's a bit early for all of that. I mean, lots of people are working on it. I think it's more accessible in the environment that we just talked about, and I'm certainly working on things at the moment that reflect what I was just explaining. I think that in the distribution space itself, it's still, when we reach the point where it can sort of automatically make the booking and when the information that comes back can be a little bit more on point, which from sort of my experience trialing it today, it hasn't sort of really quite got there yet. I think we'll see a little bit more happen there. It'll probably happen pretty quickly, but no, I'm not personally familiar with anything that really stands out in that respect yet. I don't think it'll be too long though. Yeah, there are lots of little companies that are working on this type of thing, software providers at the moment, but no, I haven't sort of seen anything that I think is remarkably shifting the norms yet.
Okay. And sort of on a related note, because I guess something that an AI continues to enable and will continue, I'm sure, for years to come, is sort of this, like there's this increasing demand for personalization from the customer side, and like getting, those very customized, tailor-made experiences, and I guess getting them quicker as well, like not having to, go through many hoops and jumps, to get to it. However, something that's quite, I don't know, it seems a lot of companies, like personalization is a buzzword, but there is this kind of like, how do you get it right? Because there's like, let's just communicate, for example, I went to England a while back to visit some family there. And then I was getting, emails from, the airline saying, oh, okay, come for this, summer break. And it's like, that's not really my destination of choice that I would go to for the summer personally. So I don't know, like, how do you think like companies in our industry can better use like technology to actually deliver personalized experiences, but like in the right way, but also, I guess, balancing it with the privacy concerns as well, because sometimes personalization can seem a bit invasive for someone like me. So I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess number one, technology isn't personal in my view, and technology can't deliver personalization. What technology can do is it can look at information and perhaps give us as hoteliers the information to craft something more to the likings of an individual, right? But I think that technology is only an enabler, right? So let's say that we know everything we need to know about Melissa, and we're gathering information from the public domain through CDPs, and we're gathering information from Melissa's custom with our business. We have all of this information available to us that gives us a sense of who Melissa is as a person and the things that motivate her and don't motivate her. And that's great. So we've got all that information and some, but then we don't have any people who are actually going to bring that to life. And so it might sound flippant, but it isn't flippant in today's hospitality environment, because if the vision out there is that I get an email that, to your point, that talks about the things that I like, well that's great. But the idea is that I consume those things, and for me, it's about the product brought to life by the service, right? It's not just about buying products. That's not what the hospitality industry is all about. So if you're going to get heavily into personalization, then you also have to have the mechanisms to have products that support personalization and service that can deliver it. And I think that in itself, based on today's macro trends for industry, might be a bit of a challenge that needs to be rethought. Because if we get to the point where we know how to look after Mark and Melissa as individuals, are we going to have the hospitality manpower to do it? That's the question that occurs to me. So, can we better use the information that we've collected over arguably at least 30 years, right? As an industry, we've been in a position to capture pretty rich information about our customers, and that's only increased over that time. So it's not that we don't have the information. We've always had the information. We're just not able to bring it to life as easily as we need to be able to, because to your point, how much opportunity do we have? If we've got a 200-room hotel and 50 people are checking in today, how much personalization can we do? Or is it going to come back to the same old story of what we have today, which is, oh, well, you're a loyalty member, so you'll get personalization, but the rest of you, sorry. So I think there's some bigger questions that have to be thought through, because I think in this case the technology will outpace the human capacity to deliver in a very short amount of time. And I think the bigger question has to be, well, that's great, we've got all this personalized information now, and it might give us the opportunity, fundamentally as a business, we want to use that information to grow revenue, but that means that we have to be able to deliver that product and deliver that service. And I think that's the bigger question.
And what would you, I mean, yeah, it is the question, but like, is there any sort of, I don't know, what would be the solution, or not the solution, but like a step towards the solution of how do we get the manpower? How do we create that, I don't know, I guess, function or within a hotel or within the business to really bring that data to life, as you mentioned?
No, it's a great question. Look, I think, again, it comes back a little bit to what we talked about right at the beginning, and some of our legacy approaches to the business of hospitality. Technology is an enabler. That's its role, and more often than not, the speed of data is faster than the speed of a person. Okay, so as a result, that means that effectively deployed and used, you should, if you have the same amount of human capital, then your human capital should have a bit of time given back to them to focus more on this aspect of hospitality. That's the theory, right? But more often than not, we see technology enablement which comes at the expense of hospitality professionals. So at some point, the balance, which in my view is a very crude way of looking at things, because we are in the very, very fortunate position as an industry today to have really some extraordinary technology available to us that allows us to operate our industry in ways that we couldn't have dreamed of, even 20 years ago. But it requires the adoption of that technology to be able to do so. And if people do that, they'll find that their manpower does have additional time to work on things that they're not working on today. This is a good example of that. So the move to personalization means that our manpower has to be in a position to be able to deliver more personalized service. A lot of the industry, at a lot of levels of the industry, is actively in the process of trying to remove service. So those things don't fit very well together. so hence my earlier comment. So if we're not going to use technology as the enabler to create more time and maintain our manpower as it exists today, and use it as an opportunity to deliver, I argue, better product and service than we've ever been able to do at any stage of the life of the industry, then it really doesn't matter what the technology can do. Hospitality is a people business, and there's nothing personal about a check-in kiosk. That's not personal, and it's not personalization. So do we use this to restore ourselves to some degree to the touch-based human hospitality industry that we grew up with? Or once we get all this information, it doesn't really matter about personalization anymore, because we're not really in a position to deliver it in most parts of the industry anyway.
And
So I think that,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, that for me is the question, because it's not a technology question in my view. You know, these things will come, it will happen, and we will have richer data available to us. We will have more efficient capabilities in our organisation. But what are we going to do with it? Is it just going to be an opportunity to improve the bottom line, or are we going to use it to take a good look at the nature of our industry and how we have run it versus how we could run it because of the strength of these tools, and use it as an opportunity to deliver that type of experience that everyone's talking about. You know, that for me is the question.
Yeah. And I think to your point of what you said about, yeah, it not being a question of the technology, but it, like, I don't know, I guess going back to what the guest actually wants, like, I think, and I know this is very anecdotal from my like perspective, but that human touch is still very important in the service levels, and like having, you know, the ability to, if there's a really nuanced, really difficult thing I don't understand, like I don't want a chat bot that's going to just give me links to a bunch of things. I want to actually talk to a person, explain very specifically like the details of what I need, and, you know, get that service back. So
Well,
yeah,
hospitality is a human condition. It's
yeah,
not a technical condition. So by virtue of that, the only thing that can deliver hospitality is people. So if there are no people, then I argue it's not hospitality anymore. So you know, and I think it's a really big risk for our industry at the moment on a macro scale in terms of, you know, some of the trends that we're seeing. You know, again, having done it, having delivered these types of environments over my career, I know what's possible, and I know what efficiencies can be gained, and I know how technology well deployed and well used can truly shift the overall performance of a hotel company, but more importantly, its perception to the customer and therefore value in kind of that business. So, you know, to your point about, well, what still resonates with customers. Every year, I spend the time to look at all of the sort of top performing hospitality products around the world from an analysis point of view. And you know, it's really interesting that more often than not, the thing that the customer resonates mostly with is service. This remains the differentiator. And the other part that I always find curious is that it's usually independent or small operators that are the ones that customers recognise as striving for that level of excellence, which I think, given a lot of the narrative that's out there about, you know, industry and what you need to have today and what you need to be, it flies very much in the face of that. You know, in hospitality, I think for me, you know, it's a very special industry. You know, it's an industry where you get to put others first and make efforts to create an environment that's better for them. You know, and that is the heart of where the industry came from. But I do feel that we're losing sight of that core value. I believe that through technology, we can actually return to that in a much more meaningful way than has ever been possible in the past. You know, and I think it'll be interesting to see which paths the industry ultimately takes.
yeah. We're coming a little bit to the end of our time, but before we go, I just wanted to touch on like sort of the last things you said. So you mentioned sort of this trend towards kind of limiting service or reducing service. If I understood you correctly, is that in like the manpower perspective? In turn, or did
Well, I think they go hand in hand. You know, if you aren't going to deliver things to the customer that have traditionally been hospitality services, then naturally you don't need the manpower. You know, I'll leave it to others to judge what the motivation of that might be, but suffice to say that less is less.
Yeah. And sort of convincing, I don't know, I guess, businesses to, for lack of a better term, that sort of balance for the long-term vision of like maintaining the service and even elevating it to like, you know, better levels than we've seen before, using technology as an enabler. What would be sort of the path forward or the first step forward in terms of convincing businesses like this is the future, this is what your business could be, and this is why you need to embrace this, but maintaining the service and using the technology to enable that?
Well, revenue growth, more effective use of your manpower, and ultimately improved profitability of the business. You know, those are the outcomes of well deployed tool sets. You know, and that is the incentive for it. Very, very simply. You know, put into another term, putting ourselves in a position to truly sell all of our products and services, giving our business the opportunity to take a look at job structures, modern versus traditional, because our tool sets allow for that. Therefore, giving our teams the opportunity to have a higher touch, or to use the term personalized experience. And as a result of all of those things, being able to deliver a more profitable business. And I think that addresses the key three stakeholders that are involved in, you know, most hospitality organizations. So, you know, it's not complex. You know, and you know, the thing I always say is whether you have technology or not, you still have to do the things that we do in the hospitality industry. Would it not be more effective to have the benefit of automation for the core task in the first place, but more importantly, have the empirical information to do more with, to make your business even better as a result? And that's really the fundamental difference between whether you do have tool sets or you don't have tool sets. And it really isn't much more complex than that at the end of the day.
I guess that's some good food for thought for these businesses to think of, looking to the future and how it relates to their business. Great. Well, thank you so much. Just one last question. So I kind of ask everybody this at the end of each episode, but what, in terms of looking at the months ahead this year, and what is something that you're looking forward to the most for our industry, and why?
Well, I'm not so sure it's this year, Melissa, but it's probably something that I've been looking for a long time, and I continue to look for, and I like to think it's coming, right? And I touched on this before, but I'm very much looking forward to the time when the industry really comes to appreciate the purpose of technology as a tool set and fully embraces it for the benefits that it brings. You know, which is, I think, you know, largely cultural more than anything. And again, that's not to say that some organisations haven't done that; they have. But you know, en masse, you know, I'm looking forward to that. You touched on the, you know, the independent end or the small operator and wherever it might be, for the betterment of industry and everything that it can bring, and that the you know, I don't need to concern myself with technology mindset sort of disappears from the industry.
I guess that it becomes like ubiquitous, like with these, yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Yep.
Well,
it's just another piece of the business, like all other pieces of the business are, you know.
yeah.
But so yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to, and the outcomes of that.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting to think about, and yeah, I guess we'll see what happens in the months and the years to come as things go along.
We will.
Be an adventure.
I've been watching for a while now, so.
Okay, well, it was really great to have you, Mark. Thank you very much again for sharing your insights with us and for our audience as well. I'm sure there's a lot of food for thought and a lot of learnings that can be gathered from this conversation. So thank you very much for your time. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.